Good day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan Metal video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at how two-turn abilities work. So essentially, basically to cut a long story short, things like the active skill of LR Belma, the super attack effects of the Great Saiyaman 1 and 2 and the Android 17 and 18, but basically essentially just taking a look at exactly how these buffs work. Now, it's super important to understand two things. One, whether it comes from a super attack or whether it comes from an active skill, they functionally work the same if they are a two-turn buff. So if it is a active skill like good old Bardock and Gine, or if it is a super attack effect like the Great Saiyaman 1 and 2, the functionality of it remains exactly the same. Now, how the buff works, the buff works exactly the same as one would have from a super attack effect. So it's the exact same layer twice over. So it doesn't fall into the support skill layer. It instead falls into the super attack effect layer and will take account into the base borderline passives of the units before application of support. So it's kind of in between the unit's passive layer and the support skill or support ability layer. So a great example that we'll see just now is we're going to compare a unit and what her stats look like with a two-turn buff, a non-two-turn buff, and basically how she is. So this is with the two-turn buff from Android 17 and 18. 35%. You can see defense at 145k. Start of turn effects are better affected by super attack effects. So for example, her start of turn defense is higher than if she were to say have a support on rotation. However, her super attack damage will be less because the support function occurs directly before multiplication from her attack and defense on super, whereas the super attack buff, the two-turn buff from Android 17 and 18, or the active skill buff, occurs before that layer. So a great example, firstly, just so you can see, obviously this is just her kind of base layer. So this is her this is her with the support function. So you can compare. You can see start of turn defense was higher in the turn where she had the two-turn buff. However, her super attack damage is going to be higher here, and that is because the support multiplier, the support skill multiplier from that Goku, that 30%, occurs directly before her super attack buff, whereas it was already layered in with her passive buff in the previous turn. So it becomes a little bit less, but her start of turn defense is higher. So it's just very interesting how it gets layered in. And here you can see without a two-turn buff, just for comparison's sake. So the real question is they function very similar to a support function, but the way they occur before the point of they occur simultaneously with the passive introduction. So you can see her start of turn defense was way higher, even though it was only a 5% higher buff, because of the fact that essentially it was multiplying into her passive, compared to whereas the support buff multiplies into the super attack effect as it occurs right beforehand. So just a slight variation, but it creates some interesting results. The point is two-turn buffs are great. They exist within the previous turn and the current turn. So the unit doesn't receive a buff when they first appear. So it lasts for that turn and the next.